You know how some words just feel like they belong together? Well, in this explainer, we're going on a deep dive to see why. We're going to explore 20 different vocabulary sets, but we're not just memorizing definitions. Nope, we're going to uncover the hidden connections and word families that really make the English language tick. So let's get started. All right, let's kick things off with our first theme. This group of words covers everything, from the basics like being conscious and the will to survive, all the way to the feelings we have for other people. These are some pretty fundamental parts of the human experience, right? Let's take a closer look. First up, we have this group: alive, aware, awake, and await. The first three all describe a state of being. You're alive, which is the opposite of dead. You're awake, the opposite of asleep. And if you're aware, it means you know about something. We often use that with the word of, like I'm aware of the time. The verb awake is a little different. It's a more formal way to say you're waiting for something, as in, I await your reply. They all share this feeling of being present and anticipating what's next. Now for a couple of words you'd hear in an emergency. Rescue is a really powerful word. It can be a verb, like when you rescue a cat from a tree, or it can be a noun, like the rescue was a success. A lifeboat, on the other hand, is a very specific thing. It's the tool you'd use for the rescue. You'll often hear them together in phrases like a rescue mission or hearing that it's time to launch a lifeboat. Here we have a perfect example of a word family. Survive is the verb. It's the action of staying alive against the odds. Survival is the noun. It's the concept or the state of surviving. You'll often hear the phrasal verb survive on, like they had to survive on wild berries. A great example sentence would be, his survival depended on finding water. So these two nouns are both in the same topic group. They're both about knowledge and understanding, but they're definitely not the same thing. Your perception is how you see or understand things based on your senses. But an insight, that's that sudden deep aha moment of clarity. For instance, you could say, my perception of the problem changed completely once I had a new insight. Both of these adjectives are positive, but there's a big difference in their intensity. Someone who is likable is pleasant and easy to get along with. You might have a very likable coworker. But something or someone who is lovable inspires a much deeper feeling of affection. Think of a puppy or a baby. They are often described as lovable. It's really the difference between general pleasantness and a true emotional connection. Okay, so we've talked about states of being and connection. Now let's switch gears a bit. Our next section is all about the words we use to show how sure we are about something, from a tiny possibility all the way to a forceful demand. This is a fantastic group because we use these words all the time. But which one should you use? Well, probability is the most formal and mathematical one. Likelihood is also pretty formal. Possibility just means something could happen. But chance, that's the one you'll hear most in everyday conversation. So you might ask a friend, what's the chance of rain, while a scientist would talk about the probability of precipitation. This word family is all about strong communication. When you insist on something, you're demanding it forcefully. The verb is almost always followed by on, as in, she will insist on paying for dinner. Urge is similar, but it's less of a demand and more of a really strong recommendation. You might urge a friend to go see a doctor. The noun form is insistence, and the adjective is insistent, like the insistent ringing of an alarm clock. Emphasize is such a key verb in communication. When you emphasize something, you're putting a spotlight on it, stressing its importance. The noun form is emphasis, and it often uses the preposition on. For example, the manager put a lot of emphasis on teamwork. Or, using the verb, the teacher emphasized the due date for the assignment. All right, let's talk about space and availability. You can occupy a seat or occupy an apartment. The opposite adjective is unoccupied. Now, the noun vacancy refers to an available space, which is exactly why you'll see a vacancy sign outside a motel. It's signaling that they have empty rooms ready to be occupied. Here are two different ways to show you like something. To be fond of something means you have a gentle, warm feeling for it, and it's really important you use the word of here. I'm fond of old movies. Pro, on the other hand, means you support an idea, usually in a debate against the con side. Context is everything. You'd never say, I'm pro old movies, but you might say, I'm pro recycling. All right, moving into our third group. These are words that help us navigate the world and society around us. We're talking about everything from official rules and exceptions to the outcomes of major events, and even the public gatherings we go to. Ever wanted to get out of doing something you were supposed to do? That's where these words come in. They're all about rules and exceptions. The key word to remember here is from. If you are exempt from a rule, it just doesn't apply to you. Exemption is the noun for that special permission. For example, a student with great grades might get an exemption from the final exam. Okay, understanding the difference here is really crucial, especially if you're reading the news. A fatality means a death. That's it. A casualty, however, is a person who is either killed or injured in an event. So fatality is always a casualty, but a casualty isn't always a fatality. Loss is a much broader term. It can refer to loss of life, but also loss of property or something abstract like hope. That kind of precision really matters. We hear these words all the time, right? But what's the real difference? Well, an exhibition is usually a curated display, like an art exhibition you'd see in a museum. A fair is typically more interactive, often with stalls for buying and selling things, like a craft fair or a trade fair. And a show is mainly a performance, like a fashion show or a rock concert. Let's just break this word right down. The prefix anti simply means against. So anti-authority literally means against authority. It's an adjective we use to describe a rebellious attitude or a deep opposition to the people in charge. You'll often hear it used to describe certain kinds of music or art, for example. Punk rock is known for its anti-authority message. This is just a perfect example of a full word family in action. Let's follow the progression. Exhaust is the verb. Running a marathon will exhaust you. Exhausted is the adjective describing how you feel afterwards. I was completely exhausted. Exhaustion is the noun for that state of being totally wiped out. And fatigue? That's a close synonym for exhaustion, but it sounds a little more formal, maybe even medical. And for our final section, we're going to turn inward. These words are all about describing our internal world, feelings like frustration and burnout, physical sensations, and even how we talk about where people come from. Okay, pay very close attention to the endings here, because this is a super common point of confusion. Frustrated, ending in ed, describes how a person feels. I feel so frustrated with my computer. But frustrating with an ing describes the situation that causes the feeling. This computer is so frustrating. So a frustrating task makes you feel frustrated. Drain is a great word because it has a really common literal meaning and a very common metaphorical one. Literally, you drain the water from the bathtub. Simple enough. But metaphorically, it means to completely use up your energy or resources. You might hear someone say, that meeting completely drained me, or describe a difficult experience as emotionally draining. Let's talk about the sense of smell. Sniff is the physical action, breathing in through your nose to try and catch a scent. Smell can be that action too, but it's also the noun for the scent itself. But aromatic is a specific adjective, and it almost always describes a strong and pleasant smell, usually from plants, spices, or food. Think aromatic coffee or aromatic herbs. Okay, let's untangle these words you probably hear all the time, especially at the gym. Exercise is the big, general category for any physical activity you do for fitness. A workout is just one specific session of exercise. Training suggests a structured program with a specific goal, like training for a marathon. Practice is all about repeating a skill to get better. And a drill? That's just one specific repetitive exercise you do during a practice. And for our last one, let's look at the different feelings or connotations these words have. Foreigner is probably the most neutral, straightforward term. Exotic suggests something is intriguingly unusual and different. We often use it for food or travel destinations. Alien is a formal, legal term for a non-citizen, like a resident alien, and it can sound very impersonal. As you can see, understanding these little differences is a huge part of building your vocabulary. It helps you see the logic and the connections inside the language. And that brings us to a final thought. What connections will you spot in the words you hear today?